Hello, today I'm coming with you guys to look at the Beauty Killer and Beauty Killer 2. This is I believe the original palette that Jeffree Star ever came out with. And then this one, I believe, came out last year in April. So I kind of just wanted to compare the two and do like the pros and cons of each palette. First, starting with the Beauty Killer palette. This palette, if you watch my other videos, I believe I received it in a mystery box, if not one of the boxes from like Beautylish. I actually kind of like this outside part. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, it's too simple looking, but I'm like, no, it's actually quite pretty, just very simple. First, got the back. It's very thin. I think that's one of the first things a lot of people talk about is how, let me pull this one out, is the comparison of thickness. Because this one is so much thicker, and I don't know if that means that there's more product in this one than in this one. But you can, I mean, and there's a mirror in here as well. But there's a mirror in here as well. So it just doesn't make so much sense why this one is so much thicker in comparison to this one. I'm not sure if that means that there's more product in this one than there is in this one, but let's talk about this one. So we're going to open it up. Not release that. So when I first see this, I'm a gal who likes colors. So something like this, these two shades right here, they bore me. Courtney and China White, I find them so boring. I thought maybe I could use them on my face and use some of these colors on my face, like this pink. I don't know what I would match this with, so I was like, I'll try and use it as a blush. Well, these colors, something like this and this, that, very pigmented, but I found it a bit difficult to work with, especially with blending out. Like, this was so pigmented, but once, like I said, I tried to use it as a blush. Once I put it on my cheek, I could not blend it out, and then I would just have it look like dots of pink on my face. I think my favorite color in here probably was this blue, this kind of maroon color, and maybe this brown. The shimmer shades in here, like, they're shimmery, but they're not to his usual level of quality. So I wouldn't say this is an awful palette. I don't even think you can buy this palette anymore, or at least not on the Jeffree Star website. This is just I guess the issue is it's more of like drugstore level makeup, not Jeffree Star level makeup. Because this is an expensive palette. This is probably, maybe, I don't know, $45, right? So this is too expensive for, you know, the quality of what it is. It's not awful. But honestly, I probably would have priced it at maybe even half, $25, $30 maybe, because the palettes are, I mean, the pans in here, they're big. They're nice big pans. You really get your brush in there and think that'll out, but I just don't think it's worth the price of what it was. So I'm going to have to pass this palette down onto a friend, but it's not the worst palette. It's just not as pigmented as I would like, but it is a little bit difficult to work with these shadows. Now, in comparison to the Beauty Killer palette, this one I was kind of like, okay, so this is, you know, the sister palette of Beauty Killer. This is Beauty Killer 2. And this one's a lot more, it has a better story. There's more colors in here that make more sense to me. It's more purple and blue leaning. So again, try to do the same thing. We have these three, which are very reminiscent of the ones in the Beauty Killer. So you got your pink, your brown, and this kind of like light, I don't know, light beige, ivory, I guess. Again, I tried to use this on my cheeks. It worked a bit better than the one from the Beauty Killer palette, but it was still kind of difficult to blend out. I think my favorite colors, ooh, that's a good question. I will say this one specifically worked very well. I think this color reminds me of, like, what was it, Wyoming Winter? Wyoming Window in his Star Yak palette, that blue that's in there. It kind of reminds me of this. And I think this color is his usual quality. Everything else is quite pigmented as well. But even though this color worked very well, I would say my favorite color in this is probably, is it Rebirth? I liked Rebirth. Redemption was really nice, and Death Row. Self-expression, don't let this bright neon color like scare you, because it once applied to the eye, like I don't know how everyone else was doing it. They were able to make it appear like it was in the pan, like this neon yellow. I could not do it. Whenever I applied it with the rest of this color scheme, it would turn into a green. So if you're okay with greens, I don't think you need to be afraid of this self-expression color, because once you blend it out with a purple or a blue, even like the pink with the browns, like it ends up turning into some sort of shade of green. So I don't think it's that scary. Overall, again, I don't really have too much of an issue. I'm just wondering if if the quality is in accordance with the price. Because I think Beauty Killer, the first Beauty Killer, is just straight up like, you know, something you'd find in a drugstore. It's drugstore makeup quality. It kind of works, but it kind of doesn't. It's not the worst, but for the price, it shouldn't have been at this price. This feels more like higher quality drugstore makeup, and not exactly still at the place that Jeffree Star's stuff is usually at. I think it definitely does challenge you. Like everyone always says, like this palette is not really for beginners. This palette is more for someone who's trying to challenge themselves and do a bunch of different colors. Because it definitely challenged me, and I really actually did like playing with it. But the only reason I'm going to end up not keeping this is because I just don't see myself reusing a lot of the colors in here, even though it was a very fun palette to use. Every time I look at these, I'm just like, well, I could pull out another palette with similar colors, with these kinds of blues or these kinds of purples, and it'll make more sense to me. So this one's also going to end up being given away, but if I had to, you know, recommend one over the other, I will say, like I said, I don't believe this one is available anymore, but if you were looking at which one should I get, which Beauty Killer is better, I feel like it makes sense that he tried to do a part 2, because the Beauty Killer 2 is better than the Beauty Killer 1, I guess. It's definitely a much better formula. It's more, I don't know, it's more artistic. But this one is definitely the more fun, better quality palette.